My colleague Lyvia and I are going to be presenting to you today about pardons in Wisconsin. So I'm going to turn it over to Lyvia to introduce herself and then get us started.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lyvia Skroblin, and I'm a student at Madison College. I'm a paralegal student, and I'm interning with Legal Action and working with Megan this semester. So, we're going to talk about gubernatorial pardon. So, what is it? It's a grant of forgiveness from the governor that can restore certain civil rights and privileges and relieve some legal disabilities. The pardon does not seal a record, but public records are updated to reflect the pardon. The governor has discretion of how, when, and if to grant pardons. Next slide, please, Megan. So here we have some numbers about previous administration. And we see here that for this present administration, Governor Tony Evers has, until the month of October, granted 307 pardons. Governor Scott Walker granted 0 pardons during his administration. Governor Jim Doyle granted 293 pardons, and Governor Scott McCallum granted 24 pardons. So, why seek a pardon? Because a pardon can restore ability to obtain certain professional license and certifications. And if the person holds gets a pardon granted, the person can hold public office. The person can own firearms, travel to certain countries, among other things. The pardon does not keep someone's criminal record from showing up on background checks. But applicants often say that a pardon makes them more attractive to prospective employers and landlords. And lastly, a pardon won't fix all the challenges faced by those involved with our criminal legal system, but it can have a tremendous impact on a person's life. Megan?
Thanks, Lyvia. There's just a slight delay with the slides. Okay, so Lyvia talked a little bit about the history of pardons in Wisconsin and why they're important. So like she said, there's a lot of discretion at the governor level about whether to grant pardons, who to grant pardons to, how to do the process. So this current eligibility criteria is what is in place right now. Governor Evers created the pardon process that his administration is following in 2019. So someone who meets all of the conditions listed on this slide is eligible to apply for a pardon. So it has to be for a felony conviction. It has to be at least 5 years since they finished any criminal sentence. So that would be like any type of prison sentence, and then any supervised release like probation, parole, or extended supervision. And the person also cannot have any pending criminal cases or charges in Wisconsin or elsewhere. And then the last eligibility criteria is that the person cannot be currently required to register as a sex offender. So like I said, if people meet all of the criteria on this slide, then they're able to apply for a pardon. It doesn't mean that they're going to be granted a pardon, but they're eligible to apply. So there were some recent changes that the administration implemented through Executive Order 130, which happened, I believe, in August. So under this new executive order, the chair of the pardon board has the discretion to recommend applicants who have old convictions that were for non-violent offenses directly to the governor's office for a pardon, with a recommendation that the governor pardon the person, meaning that they would bypass the hearing stage. So what we're hoping is that, certainly that some of our student clients are going to go through this this more expedited process where they're just recommended directly to the governor's office for a pardon, which, the advantages to that are, of course, that it would take less time than waiting for a hearing. And then also it's just a lot less stressful for the person applying for a pardon if they don't have to do a hearing and prepare for that and, publicly talk about some of the things that are probably difficult parts of their life. We're also hoping that it will shrink the current wait time for a hearing. Right now, the governor's office is telling people to expect to wait 13 to 14 months for a pardon hearing. So we're hoping that now that some people are able to bypass the hearing part, that the wait time will hopefully go down. And then the executive order also expanded the eligibility criteria. So mainly it was for people that had like a subsequent conviction to the felony that they're wanting to get pardoned. There were some complications before Executive Order 130 that this executive order eliminated. So kind of expanding the eligibility criteria and then hopefully making it a faster process, at least for some people. So we wanted to talk about a scenario. So our student here, Gary, is in a healthcare related program. He has a drug related felony conviction from when he was 18. Gary went through the Castle Branch assessment, which said that he would be eligible to take the certification exam at the end of his program, but he worries about getting a field placement. How could a pardon benefit Gary? And if anyone feels brave and wants to unmute, or if you're able to put things in the chat. I can't actually see the chat sharing my screen, so if someone could read whatever people write in the chat, that would be great. So how could this benefit Gary? So Castle Branch said that he could take the certification exam, but he's worried about a field placement.
Most field placement places, if it's pardoned, don't hold it against the individual.
So he could get a good field placement. That's great. Anyone else want to comment or talk about how, if you were talking to this student, how you would bring it up to him? So this would be, a situation where certainly broaching the topic with Gary would be a good idea, even though Castle Branch has said that he's eligible to take the certification exam. It's going to, make sure that he can get a field placement or a better field placement, or it'll just make him more employable with the pardon. So even though he's eligible to take the certification exam, it's still worth looking into, whether Gary qualifies for a pardon, because that could help him in a lot of different ways. So what does the Pardon Advisory Board consider when they're reviewing a pardon application? They look at a variety of factors. So like I said a couple of slides ago, just because someone meets the eligibility criteria does not mean that they're necessarily going to be granted a pardon. So the board looks at the seriousness of the crime, the person's entire criminal record, so other law enforcement contact that they're not even asking be pardoned is also considered, the length of time since the crime was committed, and then any personal development and progress like employment history, training and education, community service, civic activities, and then letters of recommendation are really important as well, that document firsthand knowledge of the person's development and progress. So letters, we always encourage people to, if at all possible, get letters from a teacher or a former teacher, a supervisor, coworker, a faith leader, someone like that. And then also an ability to demonstrate a significant documented need for the pardon. So what the Evers administration has communicated is that they're going to focus on cases, on applications for pardons where the person has a very concrete need for the pardon. So beyond just, I want to feel better about myself. This will help me get a job. This will help me get a home. This will help me be able to get this license. I want to hold public office, things like that. And those are things that can also be really helpful when school or work people are writing support letters. They can often say, moving up in this company would require a pardon, or, certain types of certifications or field placements are going to be harder to get or impossible to get without a pardon. So I've got another scenario. Anna is interested in your school's early childhood program. She has a felony welfare fraud conviction from when she was a young single parent and failed to notify the welfare department of a change in her work situation within the required time period. Anna knows that this conviction bars her from working as a caregiver in a certified or licensed childcare facility. So if Anna is going to apply for a pardon, does anyone feel like they want to unmute or put in the chat what would you write in a support letter for Anna, or what might be helpful to include for Anna? So some ideas would include, like, if it was a support letter from someone that has known her for a long time, explaining the difficult situation that she was in when she was a young single parent. If it's someone with the early childhood program, documenting Anna's interest and that her current conviction bars her from working as a caregiver in these types of facilities. Just documenting the need for people trained and certified in early childhood education at this time. If it's someone that has worked with her, in an employment setting or a school setting in the past, like dedication, showing up on time, completing work, how she gets along with other people. Any of that is, I think, relevant to include and would be helpful for Anna's part application. And I think one thing to really think about is, how can your school make sure to let students and even prospective students know about pardons? Because what I see a lot is I see people who are interested in going into certain programs, but they just are not in a financial situation where they can, fork over the money to enter that program and do that program without knowing or being reasonably assured that they'll be able to get a job in that area. So consider, not only letting current students know, but prospective students, so that they're not, just self-selecting out of these programs because of their convictions. So how can Lawyers for Learners help? So we hold regular free clinics where Legal Action and volunteers assess a student's background check with the state of Wisconsin and other records. And we look for a variety of things. We look for whether the person is eligible for a pardon or an expungement. We look to see if there are any arrest cycles that can be removed from the person's background check, or if there are any records that need to be corrected. Any records that should come off CCAP, which is helpful, and then also flagging cases that need follow-up work by volunteers. We're also available to provide technical assistance to school faculty and staff about writing support letters, answering questions, pointing people in the right direction. And then this is one of the ways to reach us. So the Lawyers for Learners website is a great place to ask for assistance. And this is my contact information, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm just going to go turn the light on. I think I was sitting still for too long. Okay, so that's all we had for our formal presentation today. But like I said, I'm happy to answer questions. We've got lots of people from Lawyers for Learners on who are able to answer questions about the program, the larger program. This is my contact information if you'd like to reach out to me offline about a question.
I have one question. Do you, by chance, have a PDF of all of this information that could be posted or that you could share? That, like just like a handout that we could share with students?
About pardons specifically?
I guess all of the information that, just maybe a few bullet points and then the contact information would be really helpful because I mean, I work in a jail and this would be a really hopeful, just a very hopeful bit of information that sometimes, you don't necessarily follow them when they get out, but it would be something for them to be aware of. So like something tangible that we could print and hand out or post.
Is someone from the Lawyers for Learners marketing team on? I'm not sure what all marketing materials we've got.
Yeah, I can address that. We are going to post this video and the PowerPoint so people can share it with colleagues or others who couldn't attend. We also have some, for lack of a better term, marketing or educational materials that are more abbreviated. I think that's probably more along the lines of what you're talking about, and we can certainly make sure you get those.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Right, great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Sorry, just to add to the resource that Rebecca mentioned earlier, we do have a communications toolkit page where that's all available. I'll link that in the chat for folks, but we can provide it as well with the rest of the deliverables.
And we do have a question in the chat. What types of pardon requests have been rejected?
So I think it's really, it really just depends on the circumstances. If you look, the governor's office issues press releases periodically when they grant batches of pardons. And I think one thing that is pretty noticeable when they release those is that a lot of the cases involve old drug-related crimes or property theft, property crimes. So I think it's harder to get a pardon granted if there was another person that was physically harmed as a part of the incident. That's not to say that it's impossible. And I think it really depends on the person's circumstances also. Like, was it something that happened a long time ago and nothing's happened since then, and they have a lot of really good community involvement, and they've had documented evidence of trying to improve themselves. So I think it really depends on the individual's situation and what they've done since then. But a pattern that we have noticed is that it's a lot of like old drug crimes and property related crimes are like the bulk of what we see pardoned. That's a good question. Any other questions?
There's another one in the chat. If someone has moved away from Wisconsin, but the crime or crimes were committed here, will you all help?
Yeah, so we do have some cases where the incident happened in Wisconsin and the person no longer lives in Wisconsin, and we are able to assist where the legal issue is in our service area in Wisconsin. Any other questions?
Well, I just want to thank the great speakers today. This was a fabulous presentation, and hope everybody enjoyed it and found it useful. If you have any ideas for follow-up presentations or anything else, you can let any of us know, or you can even go to the Lawyers for Learners website